Okay, so we're continuing there in Exodus 22, which continues the civil laws, right? If the moral laws are broken, how are, judges supposed to judge in certain situations? And, we essentially have Exodus 21, 22, 23, which deal with this. And again, you're not going to have every single possible scenario that you need to bring matters before judges in this. But the Lord sees fit that there should be sufficient to go by, where, God gives us enough information here where if something is outside of what is just literally said, that it is just, you should be able to follow the logic, you should follow the concepts, the principles that God has laid out in these chapters when it comes to passing judgment for a nation. And so when you look at Exodus 22, verse number 9, it says, "For all manner of trespass, whether it be for ox or for ass, for sheep, for raiment, or for any manner of lost thing, which another challengeth to be his, the cause of both parties shall come before the judges." So that's where the title comes from. Title for the sermon tonight is "Come Before the Judges." Come before the judges. We have all these verses here where we knowingly, if something were to happen, if there was some type of crime set against us, or if we did something against a neighbor, we know what our judgment might be, especially if they lived in this time under the Old Covenant, under the nation of Israel. And of course, I would say every nation should apply these laws if they want to see the blessings of the Lord in the land, if they want to see a society that works, if they want to see the concept of personal property. Because what we deal with a lot in this chapter is theft, or if someone damages someone else's property. Again, this concept of personal property or private property is fundamental to having a society work properly. Because if you live in a communist nation where nothing is truly yours and everything is just everybody's, you are not driven to be productive. You're not driven to want to help someone that has come into a bad times, because the government's going to take everything from you anyway and distribute it to people that you may not want it to be distributed to. Whereas if you have a capitalist type society where you do own your own personal property, then you also feel compelled by your own substance to help those people that are without. And so let's start there in verse number 1. Again, this has mainly, this chapter begins with theft. But verse number 1 says, "If a man shall steal an ox or a sheep and kill it or sell it, he shall restore 5 oxen for an ox or 4 sheep for a sheep." Okay, so for whatever reason, God sees fit that if an ox is stolen, that the punishment, the judgment is that the thief needs to restore 5 oxes for 1 oxen and 4 sheep for 1 sheep. Again, the Lord knows exactly why that is. You could argue, well, an ox is not just an animal that you could potentially eat from, if they had cows and the milk that comes from cows and all this stuff, but, you can also use an ox for laboring, for plowing the ground. And so maybe the ox is seen more as a tool, not just as a food source. And so maybe that's why it's a greater substance, where the sheep is primarily a food source. I guess you could use the wool for clothing as well. But, maybe that's why, there's a 5-for-1 ratio when it comes to stealing an ox. Now, when it comes to verse number 1, the reason you got this 5-fold return or 4-fold return is because the original owner no longer has access to that which was stolen. Either it was killed or eaten, or it was sold and it's now the possession of someone else. It's not something that can be returned back to its original owner. So the original owner gets back 5 or 4 of these creatures. Now look at verse number 2. "If a thief be found breaking up and be smitten that he die, there shall no blood be shed for him." All right, so if someone breaks into your house and they're trying to steal your TV, and you go and you take out your baseball bat, you smack him across the head, that he dies, there shall no blood be shed for him. Like we saw earlier in the previous chapter, chapter 21, that when it comes to premeditated cold-blooded murder, that the murderer is to be put to death, life for life. But in this scenario, you are simply defending your personal property or defending your cattle or whatever it is that they're trying to steal, that if a thief dies in that procedure, it's not life for life, okay? This is the consequences of someone breaking into trespassing and breaking into your property. But we have a little bit extra information in verse number 3. if the sun be risen upon him. So in other words, if it's daytime. So verse number 2 has to do with nighttime. It's dark. You know, you hear someone breaking into your barn, trying to steal your ox. You go out there and you swing your baseball bat, you kill the guy. Well, it's dark, you know, it's hard to see. You know, you're not sure what's going on. But there's a difference when it comes to the daytime. If the sun be risen upon him, there shall be blood shed for him. All right? So if you catch the thief during the day and then you kill him, yes, then it's life for life. Okay? Now, let's keep going. It says, for he should make full restitution. If he have nothing, then he shall be sold for his theft. All right, so it's daytime. You can see, or there can be witnesses, or your neighbors can see. You know, this isn't just what is going on in the middle of the night. No idea, just swing and hope for the best. You kill the guy. This might be a situation where you capture the thief. He doesn't run away with your goods. It says he should make full restitution. If there's been any damage done, he's got to make sure that he restores everything back to the original state. But it says here, if you have nothing, all right, he's a poor man, he can't make restitution, then he shall be sold for his theft. Now again, this is not slavery, all right? Backtrack again, just go back to the previous chapter, Exodus 21, just very quickly. Exodus 21, verse number 2. It says, if thou buy an Hebrew servant, 6 years he shall serve, and in the 7th he shall go out free for nothing. All right? So this thief being sold, right, because he can't make restitution, is himself going into servitude. We saw last week, I don't want to cover old ground, but if you have a fellow Hebrew who's poor, you can make him your hired servant, but you can't make him your bond servant. But you could have a bond servant that serves you your whole life. If they're heathen, you know, they're not someone as one that has taken the Lord God of Israel as their God. They're strangers. They come and say, hey, can I work for you all my life? They're poor. They see they can have a better life working for you. We can take off the heathen and make them a bond servant, okay? Now, in this situation, your thief breaks in, can't afford to fix what he broke, all right? Then he is to be sold into servitude. He would be a hired servant. Someone would buy him, and with the money that he's sold for, or the money that he makes while working, is to restore the things that he broke during his thievery. All right? So God would prefer not that just thieves die, but what's better is that what they stole or what they broke would be restored back to the original owner. Okay? And if the ox was killed or the sheep was killed, then fivefold and fourfold, which cannot be given back to the owner in its original state. All right? So restitution is the primary punishment for a thief. All right? Let's continue. Verse number 4. If the theft be certainly found in his hand alive, whether it be ox or ass or sheep, he shall restore double. All right, so if he steals the ox, all right, but the ox is still alive, they find it in his hand, it's in his backyard. There's the stolen ox. Well, now he's got to restore double. So he restores the ox that he stole, and he's got to provide one more extra as restoration. Okay? So the owner is getting back his original ox. In that case, he gets a second ox from the thief. That's the punishment. But if your original ox died or was sold off and you can't get access to it anymore, then you're to restore 5 oxen. Remember that? Okay? So this is the difference. Either you get your original back, and with that, you get an extra ox, or you don't get your original animal back, then you'll get 5 of those oxen. Verse number 5. If a man shall cause a field or vineyard to be eaten, and shall put in his beast, and shall feed in another man's field, of the best of his own field, and of the best of his own vineyard, shall he make restitution. All right. So if me and brother Michael are both shepherds, we both have a flock of sheep, right? And I'm just negligent with my sheep. A lot of these verses that we're about to read have to do with negligence. But if I'm kind of negligent with my sheep and I'm like, you know what? You can eat of Michael's field over there. I know he's planting crops. I know it's for his family to take care of his needs, but I will send my sheep without him knowing, and they'll eat of his grass. They'll eat of his fields, whatever, right? And then that gets found out. Well, I'm to restore everything my animals destroyed in Brother Michael's land. I am to restore with the best of my own field, the best of my own vineyard. I don't just give like for like. I have to take the best that I have and restore all of that back to Brother Michael. I hope all of this is making sense, okay? It's just different scenarios that might play out where one brother is defrauding another brother in whatever, whether it's an animal, whether it's his land. Look at verse number 6. If fire break out and catch in thorns, so that the stacks of corn or the standing corn or the field be consumed therewith, he that kindled the fire shall surely make restitution. So if Brother Jason, in his backyard, sets on fire, I don't know, some garbage. He's got some garbage. He's like, I'm going to set this on fire. And then the fire spreads and it destroys my land. All right? Well, Brother Jason has to make full restitution of the damage that he made on my land. All right? Now, think about this. In Australia, every couple of years, we have these major bushfires, that burn down lands and burn down houses. And sometimes, obviously, people lose their lives. Think about that. If someone lights a fire, and sometimes, and more often than we realize, there is someone that is found out. Someone intentionally set that fire to cause damage, right? And that fire causes damage of people's lands and properties. If we lived under God's laws, that person that lit that fire is supposed to now go and pay back, build the houses that were destroyed, everything that was destroyed by that fire. That person is supposed to go and make restitution of all that property that was damaged. So who can possibly afford to even fix one house these days? Yeah, he'd be sold into labor. Every 6 years he'd have to be sold. Whatever he gets sold for, whatever money, everything he makes needs to go back to restore the damaged property of others. All right, let him go in the 7th year. Then he goes and gets rehired again until he makes restoration, right, of everything that was possibly damaged by fire. That would change, like people from, you have these kinds of laws. You're not going to have theft. Oh man, I've got to pay back at least double or maybe 5 times potentially. Or I caused damage with someone's house because I started a fire and, I didn't put proper safe protocols around me. Of course, you're going to be more careful if you need to light a fire and make sure you put that fire out properly before it causes damage on someone else's property. Let's continue. Verse number 7. If a man shall deliver unto his neighbor money or stuff to keep, and it be stolen out of the man's house, if the thief be found, let him pay double. All right, so let's say I'm going overseas, brethren, and I'm like, Brother Damien, can you take care of my expensive possessions? My wife's jewelry, here's some cash as well in our safe. Can you please keep that safe while we go overseas? And someone breaks into Damien's house, right? We catch the thief, right? So the thief has the jewelry and the cash. He's got to restore double. So it wasn't just ox and sheep where you'd have to pay back double, if it's found in your hand, but even just physical possessions like jewelry or just any expensive items, that's paid double. All right, now let's continue. If the thief be not found. Not that, like we're going to look at this later, not that, it's just like, who is the thief? It's kind of like, was there a thief? Was there really a third-party thief? Or did Brother Damien, dip his hand into those possessions? Right? That's what we're about to read right now. All right? If the thief be not found, then the master of the house shall be brought unto the judges to see whether he have put his hand into his neighbor's goods. So I'm like, hey, Brother Damien, can you look after my cash? Here's $10,000. I don't want it to go missing. I'm going overseas for a while. Can you take care of that? And I come back later and he's like, oh, Pastor Kevin, you won't believe it. Someone broke into my house and the 10 grand is all gone. And like, well, let's find the thief. And it's like, and the police come. There's no signs of a break-in. Like nothing else was stolen but the 10 grand. It's like, we suspect the homeowner actually. So he's brought before the judges, right? And then you've got to cross-examine, was there really a thief or is the thief the homeowner, right? Is the thief Brother Damien, right? So that needs to be brought before judges to see whether, again, requires diligent inquisition. It requires, investigation, for the judges to make the proper call in that matter. All right, let's continue. Verse number 9. It says, for all manner of trespass, whether it be ox, for ass, for sheep, for raiment, for any other manner of lost thing. So I know we spoke about sheep and ox. I know we spoke about, possessions, but now like anything that gets stolen, any possible thing that might get stolen, all right, which another challengeth to be his, the cause of both parties shall come before the judges, and whom the judges shall condemn, he shall pay double unto his neighbor. So let's go back to the example of me and Brother Michael, we're both shepherds, and there's a sheep. And I'm like, hey, brother, that's my sheep. He's like, no, Pastor Kevin, that's my sheep. And we just can't, no, it's mine. You took it off. No, it's mine, right? The matter is brought before the judges. They have to make diligent inquisition, whatever, right? And if they determine, hey, Pastor Kevin, that sheep that you claim to be yours is actually Michael's. We've concluded it's actually Michael's. Then the judgment that falls upon me is to restore double. All right, here's your sheep back. Here's the sheep that was. And it's like, well, what if you're innocent, Pastor Kevin? Well, it is what it is. Judgment is not always going to be right. Judges have to make a decision. All right? They have to make the best decision they can with the limited ability of a human being without being the Lord God that knows all things. Judges have to make a call. Now, the thing about this is, let's say I'm innocent. It really was my sheep. And then the judges said, no, it's Michael's sheep. So I'm not only going to have to give him my sheep, but now give him another one of my sheep. Like I'm really at a loss here, right? And I can be like downcast. The system's not fair. This sucks. Life sucks. You could be like that. But one of the best things about being a Christian, this is what I think. You disagree with me if you like. But one of the best things about being a Christian is I know God sees it all. Like I know even if the judges pass incorrect judgment, the Lord knows. The Lord knows. And if Brother Michael is being wicked, the Lord will judge. Vengeance is mine. I will repay, saith the Lord. And I just read, gives a lot more peace. Then everything's got to be fair. It's not fair. It's like, look, sometimes you got to just allow yourself to be defrauded. It's just how it is. And when you lose, then I'm usually at peace. It's like, Lord, you know, Lord. And I just trust that you will make things right in your way, in your time. In fact, Lord, if I just act properly here and I just follow the judgment that's been laid upon me, even if it's unfair in my eyes, I know you will bless me. I know you'll do something great for me, Lord, so I'll let myself be defrauded and I'll let you bless me and I'll let you take vengeance where you see fit, Lord. And that makes life a lot easier. Instead of having to fight every battle every time, judgment has to be passed at times. Now let's continue, verse number 10. If a man deliver unto his neighbor an ass or an ox or a sheep or any beast to keep. Now, we've recently had Brother Chris on the church chat ask if anyone can take care of his dog. What's his dog's name? Boaz, that's right, Boaz, right? So this is Brother Chris, right? He says, all right, if any man deliver unto his neighbor an ass, an ox, a sheep, right? So his dog. Can someone look after my dog so I can go to soul winning Fiji or whatever? All right? To keep. All right, so I say, hey, brother, I'll take care of it. Now, if you're going to take care of someone's property, all right, it's serious business in God's eyes. All right, this is not something you take lightly. I'll care for it because look what happens. And it die if the dog dies or whatever it is, right? Or be hurt. Or driven away, like it's run away, okay? No man seen it. So let's say I take care of Boaz, and I'm sorry for using the dog Boaz as the example, but just, it makes more sense when you apply kind of normal, like current life situations, right? And I'm like, hey, Brother Chris, I'll take care of Boaz, and I put him in my backyard, and we have a dog. We don't even have a lock on our gate, by the way. It's easy to just lift, and the dog can run out if it wants. But let's say, I don't know, there's a heavy wind, and my gate opens up at night, and Boaz runs off. And I'm like, where's Boaz? Who knows? The gate's open. Boaz disappeared. All right, let's keep going. So again, no man's seen it. So it's like in the middle of the night, or it's where you think the animal should be safe and protected, maybe in a barn or something like that, right? In a pen. It should be safe and sound, but it got out. No one knows why or how, what happened exactly. It says, verse number 11, then shall an oath of the Lord be between them both, that he hath not put his hand unto his neighbor's goods, and the owner of it shall accept thereof, and he shall not make it good. So then in that scenario, I would have to go to Brother Chris. Brother Chris, I don't know what happened. Middle of the night, the gate's open, somehow this animal got away. Or somehow the animal got injured, or whatever it is, right? I don't know how it happened. We don't know. Then I've got to make an oath to the Lord. I say, Brother Chris, as with God as my witness, I promise I did not hurt your animal. I did not kill your animal. I did not try to get your animal to run away. This is not something I've done on purpose, And with that statement, with that oath, with that promise before God, all right? I mean, you're saying this before God. Like, you're saying, look, God, it's Chris, God knows that I did not intend ill for Boaz, and he got away somehow, all right? Then he just accepts it, and no restitution is made. I don't have to repay my dog or anything like that. Okay? Does that make sense? Now let's keep going. Verse number 12. Verse number 12 is the opposite. And if it be stolen from him, notice it says stolen from him. So this is where you do have, like the other one was no man's seen it, no one knows, but now it's stolen from him. It's like you have set shepherds, you have farmers, you have people that are tending to these creatures, tending to these animals, but somehow that one creature gets stolen. He shall make restitution unto the owner thereof. So again, this is kind of negligence, right? And shepherds, let's say instead of Boaz, it's a sheep called Boaz that I'm looking after. And so I've got the sheep Boaz with all my other 100 sheep, right? I've got shepherds tending the flock. And so we've got responsibility with people that are looking after those animals, making sure there's watch of wolves and foxes. And somehow still, Boaz the sheep gets killed. Boaz the sheep gets hurt, or whatever it is, right? Then I have to make restitution. Because, again, there's that concept of negligence. We were watching, we were tending. This creature was now stolen from us by some creature, some fox or wolf, and we didn't put into proper process to take care of that which was entrusted into your hands. This is why if someone says, hey, can you look after my things? Like, you got to take it seriously. The Lord takes it seriously. It's not, oh, whoops, it got destroyed. Oh, whoops, I know you entrusted me with it, but now it's all missing and gone. No, actually, if it's in your hands, okay, God doesn't want you to be negligent, and you may have to restore that which was taken and stolen or destroyed. Verse number 13, look at this. If it been torn in pieces. So Boaz the sheep, we find its remains. Okay, it's clearly been destroyed by a wolf or something, right? Let him bring it for witness, and it shall not make good, and he shall not make good that which was torn. All right, so we're tending for Boaz. I'm sorry for using Boaz. Let's change the name of the sheep now. We're tending Rudy the sheep, and Rudy, who's my neighbor's sheep, gets taken away. But it's clear that it's not like I stole the sheep. It's clear that we've not eaten it or something like that. Look, the remains are here. It's clear that some wild animal got to it and tore it into pieces. Like, no one is benefiting potentially from that missing animal, right? Then it says here, he shall not make it good. There's no need for restoration. this is just a freak accident. Here are the pieces of the animal, all right? And we bring that before the judges. They're like, okay, this is clearly not someone trying to take advantage of another person's property, all right? It's been destroyed. And it says in verse number 14, and if a man borrow aught of his neighbor, and it be hurt or die, the owner thereof being not with it, he shall surely make it good. Now, this sounds like the other verses, but this time, instead of someone saying to me, potentially, can you look after my animal? The difference now is I'm asking that person, can I borrow your animal? So the intention of having this property into my possession now is not coming from them, but coming from me. Now, why is it that you may want to borrow an animal? Okay, I know this happens sometimes, like I've seen shows of farms, and sometimes, let's say a man has an ox. Actually, no, an ox, because an ox cannot breed, right? That's what makes him an ox. Like the bull is taken and it's been castrated and it can't, it's now a beast of burden, all right? But, I've seen like TV shows of farmers or something like that, where they have like a bull, but it might be sickly. It may not be able to reproduce, all right? So you would go to your neighbor and say, hey, can I borrow your bull? Okay. My cows, I want my cattle to populate, all right? And my bull's just not doing the job. Can we borrow yours? All right. So you might borrow the bull for that purpose, for, reproduction. Or you might borrow the ox because you need to plow the ground and your ox is sick, or whatever, it died recently. You might need to borrow your neighbor's animal to do some work on your field. Okay, so now I actually need it. It's not just I'm doing you a favor to take care of your animal. I need your animal. I'm asking for your animal so we can, go through the season with the things that we need to take care of our family. All right, so in that situation, it says, verse number 14, if a man borrow aught of his neighbor, and he be hurt or die, the owner thereof being not with it. So the owner is not on my farm watching his animal. I'll take care of it, bro. Don't worry about it. And then, like, his ox breaks a leg. All right? Whatever creature it is. All right? He shall surely make it good. I have to restore the animal that I borrowed from you, because I'm returning it back to you, not in its original condition. All right? So I have to make restitution. I have to make it good. But again, the owner is not with the animal. I've just, leave it with me, bro. I'll take care of your animal. Then you got verse number 15. But if the owner thereof be with it. So I'm like, hey, bro, can I borrow your ox? He's like, sure, but I'm coming along to make sure my ox is taken care of. Or I'll come along because I know my ox obeys me. So I'll be there to watch to make sure it's safe and sound, right? The owner's now with it. He shall not make it good. So, it's fine for you to borrow my ox, but I'm going to be watching my ox. And then the ox gets hurt. Okay? Now you don't have to restore the ox to its original condition or anything like that back to the owner, right? Because the owner was there watching it himself. He knows this is not out of your negligence. This is not you treating his animal poorly. He's present. He knows for sure this is just something bad happened. Okay? So he shall not make it good. You don't have to restore that animal. If it be an hired thing, it came for his hire. All right, let's continue. Verse number 16. Now we're dealing with the topic of fornication. If a man entice a maid that is not betrothed, so this is a woman, a single woman, she's not engaged to be married or she's not married, right? A young single man, a young single woman, the man entices her, all right? This is not rape or anything like that. It's just like, hey, let's hang out. And she's like, ooh, he likes me. And they hang out together and they give into their lust. It says, and lie with her. He shall surely endow her to be his wife. He's like, look, you've taken her virginity, okay? She's now seen as damaged property, if you want to put it like that. I don't mean it that way, but like she's seen as, she's no longer like a man who would want to marry her, potentially, now would see her as, I'm unlikely want to marry her now. Okay, so the man that did entice her and commit fornication with her, he shall surely, like he should now, he's being judged, you should take this woman as your wife. Because it's very possible no one else wants to marry her and she won't have a man to look after her needs. Okay? So, I mean, essentially, don't commit fornication. All right? Because you're damaging somebody's life, somebody's body. Verse number 17. If her father utterly refuse to give her unto him. It's like, look, I know you slept with that guy, but man, that guy is a bum. That guy's a loser. Look, you're not always going to have your preferences marrying your kids. Let me tell you that, okay? But one thing is very different if this guy is only after one thing. This guy is no good. This guy refuses to work. This guy refuses to care for you. He just took advantage of you. There's no way I want you to marry that guy, okay? Then it says here, he shall pay money according to the dowry of virgins. So the man who slept with this girl has to pay the father this dowry, whatever the value is. It's the same dowry that you would pay a father to take a woman to be your wife. So you're paying for a wife, but you're not getting a wife. But you're paying what you took away from her, which was her virginity. All right? So essentially, don't commit fornication. But if you are going to defile a woman, then your intention should be to marry that person. Okay? Because her chances of finding a husband now has been greatly diminished, maybe not even possible. All right? So, and you know, I want to say this just, and I know this is unpopular, and it's going to hurt people's feelings. But you know, if you're a mother, a single mother with a child, you're very, very unlikely going to find a man who would want to marry you. I'm just telling you the truth. And girls, you need to listen up on this, okay? Men have been created by God to work, to labor. We have the body, we have that physical ability to labor for hours and hours after day after day after day. That's how God's created us to be, to take care of a wife, to take care of kids, to take care of the family needs. All right? But that man will labor as hard as he can for a woman that he believes that has remained faithful to him. Okay? A woman who is keeping herself for that man who's going to labor for her. And we live in a society today, unfortunately, that we don't value someone's virginity. People constantly sleeping around, you know, and sometimes they even celebrate what number of people they've been with. Oh, I've got the body count of 15 people. It's like, really, in the eyes of a Christian man or a Christian woman, you've been damaged 15 times. You might even have a child. And it's like, why doesn't anyone want to marry me? Look, it's obvious. It's obvious. You've been defiled. You know, it's obvious you're with child, which is not that man's. You know, and I'm sorry, I don't mean to be cruel. It's just the reality of it. You know, it's just how it is. So best thing to do, young people, is stay pure. The best thing you want in your life is to find a saved man or saved woman that will love you, that will commit their whole life to you, a man who will labor hard no matter what it takes to take care of your needs, and a woman that will keep herself pure for the man that will love her with a proper love that comes from God. You know, we want to make sure we keep this clean as much as possible. And if the mistake has been made where you've slept with this person, you committed fornication, then your intention should be get married. But again, the father can say, nope, this guy's a loser. There's no way I'm allowing my daughter to get married to this. It's only going to make the situation worse. All right. Then as a father, you can veto that. You can stop that, you know, union from happening. Let's continue. Verse number 18. Verse number 18, 19, and 20 is about witchcraft, bestiality, and false religion. Verse number 18. Thou shalt not suffer a witch to live. If someone's a witch or a wizard or practicing the black arts, whatever, is that what they call it? Dark arts, black arts, I don't know. That on the land, where this land, is a land of covenants with this nation of Israel, then the witch is to be put to death. Verse number 19, whosoever lieth with a beast shall surely be put to death. Now, I don't want to go into gruesome details here, but it's with an animal. If you're old enough to know, you understand. All right, that person is to be put to death. Verse number 20, he that sacrificeth unto any god, save or except unto the Lord only, he shall be utterly destroyed. So if Old Testament Israel has someone in the land worshiping a false religion, sacrificing to a false god, that person was to be taken and put to death. Remember the commandments, the 10 commandments. God said that he is a jealous God. All right, he's jealous for worship. In the Old Testament nation of Israel, his covenanted people were to worship him and him only. So these are 3 major sins or crimes even that require the capital punishment of death. Okay? Let's continue. Verses 21 to 24 has to do with foreigners, widows, and orphans. All right? Verse number 21. Thou shalt neither vex a stranger. Remember the word stranger means foreigner. Okay? Nor oppress him. For ye were strangers in the land of Egypt. You got a foreigner that comes through the land, he's passing through. He's just passing through, right? He's just maybe crossing from one side to another side to get to a place. You don't go and hurt him. You don't go and take advantage of him. You don't go and abuse him, right? You don't do anything that will hurt this stranger because you were once strangers in the land of Egypt. You know what it's like to be afflicted by a foreign nation. You know what it's like to be mistreated. And God says, I delivered you out of Egypt. So don't go around treating foreigners the same way you were treated by the Egyptians. Verse number 22, it's really, really serious what we're about to read here. Ye shall not afflict any widows or fatherless child, orphans. I've told you before, God has a great love and care for widows and orphans. All right? Now again, what's a widow? A woman who has lost her husband, right? She's alone now. The main breadwinner is not there anymore. So usually in these days, she would start to become poor, unable to take care of herself. The husband is also the one who's out there laboring hard on the field and all these things, right? She doesn't have the same strength of a man, all right? The man is her protector, her provider. She doesn't have that anymore. And then we read about false prophets in the New Testament where they creep into the widows' houses. They take advantage of people who are downtrodden. And the orphans, fatherless child, they're not growing up with their father. They don't have, again, the breadwinner who's going to take care of their child's needs. They haven't got the example of a man. What is it to be manly? They haven't got that example. They haven't got the nucleus of a family, mum and dad here with me. So, there might be people that take advantage of these people. They haven't got the father, they haven't got the husband. Well, how can I profit from these people? How can I take advantage of these people? Because they haven't got their main protector. So God says, you shall not afflict any widow or fatherless child. And I love the next verses, 23. If thou afflict them in any wise, and they cry at all unto me, I will surely hear their cry. They may not be able to go to the judges. They may not be able to afford a lawyer and all these things, right? But God says, if I hear them cry, it says, like, if they come to me, I will hear them. I will hear their cry. Look at verse 24. And my wrath shall wax hot, and I will kill you with the sword, and your wives shall be widows, and your children fatherless. God says, I will do it myself. All right? You mistreat these people, I will kill you. I will make your wife a widow. I will make your children orphans. Your family will feel the same, hardship that these people have felt. I mean, this just shows you how God cares for the widows and the orphans. All right? Like we know they're downtrodden. They haven't got that man to take care of them. Okay? They're usually going to be poorer. Okay? They're not necessarily going to have their voices heard in the courts. God says, I hear them. So let's be careful. People that are downtrodden. Pastor Kevin. And look, I was in Sydney recently for a few things, and I went into the city. There are homeless people everywhere. What's your thoughts on that? I'll tell you now, we live in Australia, partly capitalist, partly socialist. Okay? There is no reason whatsoever for anybody to be homeless in Australia. I'm telling you honestly, okay? Like, I know that if you happen to lose your roof over your head, you can go to organizations, you can go to Centrelink. Right now, there's an argument to be made, should these things even exist? But I'm just saying, in Australia, if you go and tell somebody, I am homeless, and you actually want a roof over your head, you will get it. And you might even get it the next day. Because I already know, I talk to people all the time, okay, who get into bad situations. Sometimes church members, sometimes not church members. And it doesn't take long. If someone wants a roof over their head, they'll get it. And they'll get it for free. That's if they want it. Most homeless people, truly, they want to be homeless. Okay? It's kind of like, if someone is struggling financially, Pastor Kevin, let's help this person in a financial need. My initial question is that person working a full-time job? Oh, no, they're not. I'm not going to help them. God commanded them 6 days shout down labor. Like, if someone's not doing that, why would I help them? Now, if there's a brother in the Lord, in our church, whatever, who is laboring, who's clearly working hard, he's clearly putting all his effort in to provide for his home, and he falls on bad times, and he's got let's say he crashes his car or something, and it's a write-off and insurance won't cover it, and it's like, brother, how do we help this person? Absolutely, let's go and help them. Let's see what we can put together. This is clearly a man who's trying to do what he can to take care of his needs and his family needs, and he's fallen on bad times, or this widow's fallen on bad times, this orphan's fallen on bad times, and you can see they're doing what they're required to do. I will help them as much as humanly possible. And I would hey church, let's put a collection together. Let's help them out. And we've done things like that before with people. But we live in a nation where, honestly, there is help everywhere. And I personally think even a lot of this social help out there is being abused. But there is so much out there that to me, it's, if we truly had a widow or an orphan that we could take care of, let's take care of them. But usually we live in a society where we have systems in place to take care of that, where without your consent, your taxes are being taken out of your pocket to fund these systems to then take care of these people that are struggling, all right? So we just have to understand that Australia is not operating under Old Testament principles, Old Testament laws. It's not, unfortunately. The world would be better if it were, right? Australia would be better if it were. Because then we can give out of our own hearts, genuine charity, out of our own desire to be a help to these people that are struggling. Unfortunately, our governments will steal from our pockets and give it to people who are not laboring 6 days, who are not trying to make a better life for themselves, and they're just getting the paycheck. Anyway, maybe I'm venting a little bit. I don't know. Let's move on. Verse number 25. Now we're talking about lending. And in particular here, lending to the poor. If thou lend money to any of my people that is poor by thee, thou shalt not be to him as a usurer, neither shalt thou lay upon him usury. Now, usury or usurer, these aren't words that we use in our modern vernacular, but the usury just means essentially interest. If someone in our church is poor, falls on bad times, and comes up to me or comes up to you, can I borrow, I'm in bad times, can I borrow $2,000 for whatever? And you're able to. You're in a position to be able to help them, okay? Now, actually, let's not talk about Australia for a moment. Let's talk about Old Testament Israel. We're in that time. Can I borrow $2,000? You go, yeah. All right, here's $2,000 to get you back on your feet. You are not to charge them interest. You're not like, well, you can use this, pay it back in 6 months, and by the time you end up paying it back, you've got to pay it back $2,500. That's the interest. No. Okay, you're not to do that, you know. Now, that's the only verse we have in this chapter on that topic. So this is really interesting. There are people that have very strong opinions on interest, charging interest, or taking out loans and things like that. But let me show you that usury or interest in of itself is neither wrong nor right. Or it can be wrong and it can be right, okay? Come with me to Deuteronomy 23, please. Come with me to Deuteronomy chapter 23, please. Deuteronomy 23. Like I always say, when it comes to doctrine, there are always like extremes. Usury is always bad, or just take, borrow all the time. It's like, usually it's going to be the truth and the balance is going to be somewhere in the middle, usually, okay? Look at Deuteronomy 23, please. Deuteronomy 23, verse number 19. Deuteronomy chapter 23, verse number 19. So Deuteronomy is a retelling of the law. We're hearing it again. And sometimes we get extra information. In this case, we get extra information. Deuteronomy chapter 23, verse number 19. It says, "Thou shalt not lend upon usury to thy brother, usury of money, usury of victuals, usury of anything that is lent upon usury." So your brother, this is your fellow Hebrew. Do not charge your fellow Hebrew any interest. If you're going to lend him anything, whether it's money or whether it's victuals, that's food and food and drink. Verse number 20. Unto a stranger or unto a foreigner, okay, thou mayest lend upon usury. Oh, so there is a time you're actually allowed to charge interest, but not to your fellow Hebrew, to a stranger, to a foreigner, okay? Thou mayest, not that you have to, but you're allowed to, mayest, okay? Lend upon usury, but unto thy brother thou shalt not lend upon usury, that the Lord thy God may bless thee in all that thou settest thine hand to in the land whither thou goest to possess it. God says, if you don't lend with interest, God will make sure he blesses you. Yeah, I need the interest. I'm missing out. God says, don't worry, I'll bless you. Like, I'll pay the interest. Like God's saying, like, I'll make sure you're blessed. Don't worry about it. Don't charge your brother, but you may charge interest on the foreigner, okay? Then the question becomes, well, how do we apply that today? And this is where you're going to have different, interpretations of how do we apply it in New Testament times, okay? So number one, first thing, the first position might be, okay, you're not to lend to your brother, i.e. your fellow Hebrew, and we can charge interest to the foreigner. So Australian banks, when they lend money, if someone takes out a personal loan or a car loan or a house loan, whatever, then the Australian bank should not charge another Australian any interest. And you could take that view if you want. I see it. I can see why that might be a view you take, because we're talking about your fellow brother. But if someone, like in China, wants to buy a piece of land in Australia, whether you agree with that or not, and goes to an Australian bank to borrow money to buy that land, well, then the Australian bank can charge the China man interest for that because he's not of the land. Okay? So you could take that view. So therefore, Pastor Kevin, our Australian banks are wicked because they're charging interest to Australian people for borrowing money. Okay. I'm not a banker myself, so it doesn't really bother me. You kind of interpret that. The other view is, well, usury here, you're not to charge usury to your brother. And the strangers or the heathen on the land, or the heathen that are out there, they're not our brother, as it were, right? So under the old covenant, they're supposed to be saved people, essentially. Like they're supposed to be people that love the Lord, that are saved. They put their faith in the Lord God, right? That's what they're meant to be. I know they weren't always. I know there were many wicked and unsaved people in the land, but that was the general concept. So those that were under the old covenant are supposed to be God's people, right? They're supposed to be making God their God. So then the other view would be out there would be, well, the way we apply today, Pastor Kevin, would be this, that a brother in the Lord should not charge another brother in the Lord interest if they were to borrow money. But if you were to lend money to somebody that is not a saved brother in the Lord, then you could charge them interest. And then the idea there would be, well, then maybe the Australian bank, which I guess doesn't represent a saved organization of Christian believers, have the right to charge then a saved believer interest because we are not technically brothers. Again, I'm not even making a case for what my position is. I'm just throwing it out there, what some people will take to be like, which way do you look at this? And then you also want to avoid the extremes, because you can see in the Bible there is a time he allows usury, and there's a time that he doesn't allow usury when you're borrowing money. Okay? So again, there are many. One day, I think maybe one day I'll just focus on this one topic. I might do a whole sermon on borrowing money, on usury, interest, and we'll just look at every reference there is about this topic and come to a conclusion. But if you can, just one thing before I move on from that, come with me to Matthew 25, please. Come with me to Matthew 25. Matthew 25. So there's a parable in the Bible. There's actually two parables. There's the parable of the pound and the parable of the talent. And both of them have a very similar teaching. So we're going to look at the parable here of talents. Matthew 25, please. Matthew 25. And this is where a wealthy owner leaves his servants talents that they're to use and to multiply. That they're left. And the illustration is, Jesus has gone to heaven. We're here on this earth, and we're here trying to serve him and to multiply the work that he's left us to do. That's the kind of the teaching, right? And for us, some of us, he's given 10 talents, some of us 5, some of us are more talented than others. Some of us have more gifts than others. Some of us have more ability to do greater things for God than others. But God has given us all a measure of ability to serve him, all right? And then in Matthew 25, verse number 26, the Lord comes back to see how well his servants performed. And there's one servant that did nothing with his talent. And in Matthew 25, 26, this is, of course, representative of Jesus. The Lord answered and said unto him, Thou wicked and slothful servant, thou knewest that I reap where I sowed not, and gather where I have not strawed. Thou oughtest, or you should have, thou oughtest, therefore, to have put my money to the exchanges, and then at my coming I should have received mine own with usury. Take therefore the talent from him, and give it unto him which have 10 talents. So what is Jesus saying in this illustration? You are so wicked, you did nothing with the talent that I left you. You should have put it into the exchanges or the banks or the share market, whatever it is, right? You should have put it somewhere, invested it somewhere, put it into a high yield savings bank account so that when I came back, you could give it back to me with usury, with interest that you've earned on that item. So you can see here, interest is seen as a positive thing. And in this illustration, the man that did not gain interest, because he didn't gain interest on that one item, is seen as a wicked and slothful servant. And none of us want to be seen as a wicked or slothful servant. So if usury was this wicked thing, then you couldn't say, you're wicked, why didn't you put it into usury? Why did we, no, you can see that usury can also be a positive thing if it's done, by proper principles, proper boundaries that God has outlaid for us in the Bible. But again, I don't want to spend so much time on this, but it is quite a big topic. Again, one day, maybe, Lord willing, I'll preach on this one topic alone. Let's go back to Exodus 22. Exodus 22 and verse number 26. Exodus 22, verse number 26. This still has to do with lending or borrowing money. Verse number 26, it says, If thou at all take thy neighbor's raiment to pledge, thou shalt deliver it unto him by the sun. By that the sun goeth down. So someone says, hey, can I borrow $2,000? And I'm like, yeah, but what security are you giving me, for this money? He goes, look, you can have my jacket. Because back then, clothing was really, really, really expensive. They didn't have machines that creates clothing in 10 seconds. Right? It's all handmade clothing, all right? Very expensive. What security can you give me, for this loan? And the guy goes, you can have my jacket. Well, when the sun goes down, when it gets dark and cold, you're to return it back to him. Verse 27, for that is his covering only. It is his raiment for his skin. Wherein shall he sleep? And it shall come to pass, when he crieth unto me, that I will hear, for I am gracious. Again, this is a poor person. He's got nothing but his jacket. He goes, can I borrow some money? You're like, okay, but I need your jacket. Okay, fine. You can hold on to the jacket as security, but when it gets dark and he needs to sleep and needs to stay warm, return the jacket back to him, all right? And then when the sun comes back up, he can return the jacket back to your security while he goes and works and pays back the loan that he borrowed off you, all right? Verse number 28. So, God is saying, look, if you are going to borrow, I do not want the borrower to be mistreated. I don't want borrowers to be abused, all right? That's why he's put restrictions around usury and how you treat poor people. Let's continue. Verse number 28. Thou shalt not revile the gods, nor curse the ruler of thy people. I like verse number 28 being here, because what we've dealt with so far have been widows, orphans, the poor that need to borrow money. Okay? Go, well, we're not to mistreat them, but surely we can speak against the powerful. We can speak against authorities. No, thou shalt not revile the gods. These are people in authority. Nor curse the ruler of thy people. My prime minister sucks. Yeah, it kind of does. But look, God is saying essentially, look, don't mistreat the poor, but also don't go around mistreating the wealthy, okay, or the powerful, all right? So again, essentially, don't be a respecter of persons. All right, and sometimes we are this way. We just, sometimes people honor the wealthy and look down on the poor, or you fight for justice to the poor and you take away from the wealthy. There's a big issue happening even in Australia these days. You've probably heard of the new budget and new taxation rules, and everyone's, wow, man, the government's taking more from me all the time, and it sucks. So then it's easy, you wave your fist. This is why we need to pray for our kings. We need to pray for our governments. We need to pray for our rulers, that we can live a peaceful Christian life without restrictions. I don't know how much we pray for our politicians. They would pass laws that make life easier, pass laws that we can hold on to more that we work for than are being taken away from us by taxes and things like that. Pray more that the laws that get passed will not restrict our religious freedom from serving God. We need to keep our rulers in prayer. All right, then we have verses 29 and 30 about our first fruits. So again, most of everybody that lived in Israel at this time, you had land, you had, farmers, agriculture, all this stuff. That was the society that they lived in. Verse number 29, thou shalt not delay to offer the first of thy ripe fruits and of thy liquors. The firstborn of thy sons shalt thou give unto me. So this is about your first fruits. When the new crops begin to come forth, you're to take of the first ripe fruits and the first best of what you have, and you're to bring that to the house of the Lord. All right? Some people confuse the first fruits with tithing. First fruits are just the first of your seasonal growth, whether it's crops, whether it's animals. The tithe is 10%. Okay? Like your first may not be 10%. Your first crops might be only 1%. Who knows? All right? But overall, during the season, you ought to take 10% of your growth and give that to the house of the Lord. But it says here, and of thy liquors, that's not talking about alcohol. Okay? I know we look at that word, that's got to be, are they drinking alcohol? No, it's just liquid, right? So grape juice, or if they have olive oil, like that, okay? You have to take that and give that. And of your firstborn of thy sons, I'll talk about that in a moment, thou shalt give unto me. Verse number 30, likewise, shalt thou do with thine oxen and with thy sheep. 7 days it shall be with his dam. On the 8th day thou shalt give it to me. Everything of the new season, new harvest, new animals that are born, they're to be given to the Lord as sacrifice, okay? Or to the house of the Lord, and the Levites would take care of themselves from this. Now, when he mentions even your firstborn of your sons, I don't know if you remember. We're going to have to look back very quickly. I know we're getting to the hour mark. But can you go to Exodus 13 very quickly? Because this isn't the first time we have this lesson for us in the book of Exodus. Okay? We first learnt about this in Exodus 13. Come back with me to Exodus 13. You may recall that the 10th plague that fell upon Egypt was the death of the firstborn son. Okay, and the first of the animals. This was the final plague that fell upon Egypt, so grievous that Pharaoh just wanted to get rid of the Israelites off their land. And so we get to Exodus 13 and verse number 12. It says here, that thou shalt set apart unto the Lord all that openeth the matrix. That's like the womb, okay? And every firstling that cometh of a beast which thou hast, the males shall be the Lord's. And every firstling of an ass thou shalt redeem with a lamb. So if your donkey gives birth, all right, instead of offering the donkey, you to offer a sheep in exchange, okay? A lamb. And if thou wilt not redeem it, then thou shalt break his neck, and all the firstborn of man among the children thou shalt redeem. So my firstborn son, Nicholas, he's one that I'm to give to the Lord, but I don't offer him as a sacrifice per se. I would redeem him. I would purchase his price, and that value, whatever, I can't remember what it was right now, gets given to the house of the Lord in exchange for my son. Okay, so my son's not working for the Levites for his whole life. It's not like some human sacrifice. My firstborn son, thank you, Lord, for the first that you've given me here. Now I'm going to take a portion of my wealth and give that as redemption money for my son. All right? And then verse number 14, and it shall be when thy son asketh thee in time to come, saying, what is this? Like, why are we doing this, Dad? That thou shalt say unto him, by strength of hand the Lord brought us out from Egypt, from the house of bondage. And it came to pass, when Pharaoh would hardly let us go, the Lord slew all the firstborn in the land of Egypt, both the firstborn of man and the firstborn of beast. Therefore I sacrifice to the Lord all that openeth the matrix, being males, but all the firstborn of my children I redeem. All right, so it's a picture of Jesus being the payment of our sins. We were redeemed by the blood of Christ. Okay, so all of this idea of redemption, the firstborn, has to do with Christ and redeeming us in salvation. All right, last verse in Exodus 22. Thank you for your patience. This final one is about your health and hygiene. Verse number 31. And ye shall be holy men unto me. The word holy again means separated, set apart. Neither shall ye eat any flesh or any meat that is torn of beasts in the field. Ye shall cast it to the dogs. All right, so you're a shepherd, and where's my little sheep? Oh, it's been destroyed by a wolf, by a fox. And you're like, man, that meat's all fresh. Maybe we'll cook it up and feed it to the family. No, it could be diseased, right? It's been, even the teeth of the creature that ripped it apart could be carrying diseases, whatever it is, right? And God's saying, look, for your health, for hygiene, I don't want you to be like everybody else. You're set apart. You're a holy people. You're meant to be a clean people. And by the way, I think it's in Leviticus. It does talk about if you do eat animal, like a dead animal like that you ought to be going for a cleansing ritual to wash your clothes and all this stuff. I won't go into all that now. All right. So God is essentially teaching the nation how to be clean. All right. Don't eat this food that you just found on the ground. All right. You might be driving home after church and you see a dead kangaroo got hit by a car recently. Oh, that's a nice dinner. No, don't. Okay. Because it could kill you. It could be carrying things that are not good for you, and God wants you to be different from the world. And of course, this pictures again that, just the difference between holy and unholy, difference between clean and unclean, and all of these things represent, unholy and unclean represents sin, and being made clean represents salvation of sin through Jesus Christ. And so God is saying to his people, I want you to reflect what is holy. And that's why we often call ourselves Christians, because in our life, we ought to reflect that which is clean, which is Jesus. Okay, so all of this stuff essentially points us back to Christ and his body. All right, brethren, title for the sermon tonight was Come Before the Judges. Exodus 22, come before the judges. This was a system of judges that God set up for the early nation of Israel. Let's have a word of prayer.